Before you start Lesson 29, make sure you complete Test E in the Test Masters on circles. Lesson 29 has 3 parts. The first part is on rounding whole numbers. Then we'll talk about rounding mixed numbers and using rounding to estimate answers. When you do rounding of numbers, it's important to know about the place value. And if you need to, there should be a place value chart on like the very last page of your textbook. So you might want to look at that from time to time to help you remember the place values. Let's just do an example. Let's say I wanted you to round this number to the nearest 100. Well, what that means is you look at that 3, that's what you're rounding to. And the best way to think about it, or some steps that you can do, is to circle the place that you're rounding to, then put an arrow over the digit to the right. If that digit is equal to 5 or greater than 5, then we'll round the 3 up to a 4. If it's less than 5, then we leave the problem alone, or leave the 3 as it is. So 327, rounding that to the nearest 100, we would just write that 300. If we had this number and we wanted to round this to the nearest 100, 667, again, we circle the number we're rounding to, or the place that we're rounding to, the hundreds place, put an arrow over the next digit, that's a 6, so that's greater than 5, and that means we'll round that 6 up to a 7. And rounding 667 to the nearest 100 would equal 700. Now if we're rounding mixed numbers, we just have to look at that fraction part. Like if we had 15 and 3/4, that fraction, if it's greater than a half or equal to a half, then we round up. So we have 3/4 there. 3/4 is greater than a half, so that means we would round this to 16. If we had this 27 and 1/3, well, we look at that fraction and we see that that is less than 1/2. 1/3 is less than 1/2, so we would just leave the 27 alone and write it 27. That would be rounding to the nearest whole number. That's usually what we do when we round a mixed number. When we say round that mixed number, then you round it to the nearest whole number. If the fraction is half or greater, you round up. If the fraction is less than half, you round, or you just leave it alone. You don't change the whole number part at all. Why don't we go ahead and do some problems? I want you to round practice problem A to the nearest 100. If you want to pause the CD and do it on your own, you can. So the nearest 100, that would be the 3, right? So we circle the 3, put an arrow over the 8. That 8, the arrow marked digit, is greater than 5, so that means we'll round that 3 up. We'll change it to a 4. And there's our answer, 2400. In B, round that to the nearest 1,000. So you'll circle the 7 because that is in the thousands place. Put an arrow over the 4. That is less than 5, so that means we leave the 7 alone. 17,000 would be the answer there. Practice problem C, I want you to round that to the nearest 100,000. So circle the 100,000s place. That would be the 8. Put an arrow over the next digit to the right. That's the 6. That's greater than 5, so we'll round that 8 up to a 9. 2,900,000 is the answer. Now in practice problem D, what I want you to do there is just estimate an answer to that problem. And a lot of times that's a good idea to do because that helps you check your work. It's a quick, easy way to get confidence in your actual answer. Now think about this too. You're estimating the answer. This is not the exact answer. So if your answer is maybe a little bit off from the textbook when you do these problems in your homework, then it's not necessarily wrong. As long as you're close to their answer, that's all that matters. Keep that in mind. Just think about what you're doing. You're not trying to get an exact answer here. You're estimating, and you're going to use rounding. And like practice problem D, what would be the easiest way to round that? Well, you could round 6994 up to 7,000, right? And 1,007, just round that to 1,000, and you can just say 6,000. That's your estimate. So I rounded to the nearest thousand there. You just kind of have to look at the problem and see what you should round to. Usually what you'll do on these is round to the last place that they have. Like this, the biggest place in these two numbers was the thousands, so you round to the thousands place. Look at E. Estimate an answer to that problem. 196 times 41. We'll just round the 196 to 200 and the 41 to 40, and you'd quickly see that an estimate would be about 8,000. And doing 196 times 41 would take a little bit of time to do the math on that. The estimate is real easy, and that'll give you confidence in what your answer is. As long as you're close to that number, then that gives you confidence that you did everything correctly. Look at F. 2950 divided by 9. We'll just do 3,000 divided by 10. That's 300. That's your estimate to the answer for that problem. So when you estimate, you're usually just rounding to the highest place value for each particular number in the problem, and that's a quick, easy way to calculate an estimate for the answer and give you confidence when you do the actual math to see if you got close or not, see if you got the answer right. Let's do one more. Estimate an answer to 14 1/5 divided by 1 7/9. So what you want to do is round those mixed numbers up or down, whatever you need to do. 14 1/5, you just change that to 14 divided by 1 7/9. We could round that up to 2 equals 7. 14 divided by 2 is 7. That's our estimate for that problem. Just remember, we're estimating. We're not trying to get an exact value on these problems. Remember that when you do your homework as well. If your answer to an estimate problem is a little bit off from the answer in the book, then that's okay. It doesn't have to be exactly what they got. Usually what they're going to do, though, is they'll round each value to the highest place value that it can be, and then they'll do the division, addition, whatever the operation is you need to do. Okay, well that's all for lesson 29.